Welcome to BFC Live, the daily video and podcast series of Business of Cannabis. BFC Live highlights the companies, brands, people, and trends driving the global cannabis sector. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com. Coming up on BFC Live, we sit down with Socrates Rosenfeld. He is the CEO of Jane Technologies. They completed a $100 million capital raise last week. We wanted to connect with him this week to talk about what that meant for him and the future of Jane Technologies. Socrates, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jay. It's great to be on, man.
You've been busy.
Yeah, never a dull moment in this industry. Certainly not at Jane either, man.
Well, for those that don't know, although it's hard to miss, tell us a little bit about Jane, then we'll get into the background, we'll get into the capital raise you guys did, but give us the quick snapshot of what Jane is for those that don't know.
Sure. Quick snapshot is Jane is the largest e-commerce provider in North America, now providing e-commerce tools and platforms for brands and retailers across now 37 state markets in the US, across Canada. We're in about 2,200 dispensaries, work with hundreds and hundreds of brands, essentially trying to make shopping online for cannabis very simple for the consumers and then very simple for the sellers as well.
Well, it's fun. It is simple. And as right before we were coming on, I was on Jane. I was like, oh, let me see if I could. I was using my old address in San Francisco, and I was like one click away from ordering something to an address that I no longer live at. But I am kind of excited about this thing. And maybe you know, because they're California based, but Big Pete's cannabis-infused peanut butter cookie.
Man, your Big Pete's is a Santa Cruz native, one of the OG companies here based in Santa Cruz. They have an unbelievable edibles line. And there's Big Pete and Pete Jr., who's his son, and they do some unbelievable things. A great brand.
Well, I almost bought them. I almost bought them, which is funny because I never would have been able to get them. But maybe I should keep them on hold at the store until I get there. So we learned a little bit about Jane, and then of course last week it was impossible not to notice that obviously you guys completed and announced a big capital raise, $100 million. Talk about what that means. We were chatting before we came on, like what it's like raising that kind of capital versus what it's like raising the first several dollars that you raised to start Jane. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that journey.
Man, and we were just talking about this and something I was sharing with my team last week, where the feeling of, I remember that first $25,000 check was actually from a friend from the Army. And he's like, I have no idea what you're building, Sock, but man, I believe in you, and here's some money. And I remember getting that and being so exhilarated that I actually get to go and build this dream. It gave me just a little bit more time. And the mechanics and the feeling was the exact same of raising 100 million. It's just now on a bigger scale with more sophisticated investors who, ask more challenging questions and really kind of have built visionary businesses themselves. And so really kind of pushing us to think big, which is wonderful. The stakes are obviously higher, right? We're going to have to do bigger things for this industry. But at the end of the day, the feeling is the same, Jay, where we get to put, more capital back into the business, which ultimately allows us more time and space to go and pursue this dream and make it into a reality.
Yeah, well, it's very compelling. And obviously it's a lot of capital to do that. And I wonder, as you look at the landscape of what's happening in the US and Canada and even around the world, like what excites you today that sort of maybe you weren't even expecting, 3, 4, 5 years ago? Like, is it the expanse? Is it like where you guys are as a company, or is it all of those things?
Yeah, it's definitely all of them. What I think is the most unexpected thrill out of all this is cannabis is no longer a second-class citizen when it comes to technology, right? Like 5 years ago, it was like, hey, what basic services are you going to be able to provide? It's like an online menu. Like that's pretty basic, and it was back in 2017 when we started the company. But now, since the growth of this industry has come on so quickly, and the innovation has come on so quickly, and quite frankly, the retailers' expectations and demand for their technology is it's been wonderful to watch. It has now really created this very interesting ecosystem whereby cannabis, the cannabis industry, the technology being built here specific for this industry is inspiring other retail verticals to follow suit. You know, omni-channel O2O was a thing that you only did for restaurants. But now look at what's going on in alcohol. Look at what's going on in convenience goods, groceries, et cetera. Obviously, accelerated through the pandemic. But now the future of retail is digital. And we always said that that was going to be the case 5-6 years ago when we started the company. But to think that now it's not only a reality, but the cannabis industry and the tech companies in the cannabis industry doing some wonderful things are perhaps inspiring others or building technology that other platforms will be able to use is really, really exciting. I think it's a long time coming, man, that this industry is being viewed as a first-class citizen on parallel with other retail verticals in the world.
It is, the way you've just put it is very compelling, but I actually want to specific to you and I guess sort of how you've built your team, and more specifically, I guess, because you were obviously in the hotbed of sort of tech and getting those people on board. Like, how do you find, I mean, there's, you know, lots is written about sort of finding the right tech people to work in your space and like being able to have access to them, and you're in the hotbed of it, but there's lots of competition. How are you finding sort of that ask of like employees to say, you have literally, you know, you could write your destiny, but we want you to come to Jane?
Yeah, man. What a great question, Jay. And this is something that I've realized, you know, the best engineers, the best salespeople, the best employees could really go anywhere. And very few of them are driven by money. To be honest with you, very few of them are driven by quote unquote perks of a business. What I've seen, obviously those things are nice. You know, taking care of employees is number one, and that includes paying them well. But real and taking care of them. But really, what gets the employees here at Jane excited, and quite frankly, what has cemented our culture here at Jane, is the fact that we get to pursue something that we believe in, that we get to pursue something that protects the integrity of a plant that helps a lot of people, that we get to revolutionize the way e-commerce has been constructed since the onset of the .com era, where now we can actually enable first-party sellers with digital tools rather than having them to rely on marketplaces that perhaps exploit them. This is what excites us. And I think, quite frankly, at the end of the day, they can come to a space where they can be authentically themselves. And in a time where a lot of us are working remote, and it's COVID, and there's global warming and wars all over the world, man, like, to build a company where people, number one, share the same values in terms of where they want to take this industry, but also sharing the same values and how we want to get there. That's what attracts not necessarily the best employees, but the right employees, and that's who we're looking for. And it's and I love each and every one of the 90 or so members at Jane currently today.
It's a big company now.
I know, man. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I want to ask you about that because I would say maybe it's been a month, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. There's been lots of news, obviously, sort of at the intersection of cannabis and technology, not only about big capital raises like yours, but I think maybe that's indicative of where the industry is going, as sort of touched upon, and where the maybe the previous several years was about, you know, cultivators and how big their sort of capacity was going to be, and then, you know, the MSOs and how many states they were going to be in. But it really seems to be the interest, or maybe the new interest, in sort of the underpinning of an industry like the technology you're talking about. Like, is this the evolution of just industries overall? Like, it's the producers and manufacturers, and then it's the technology, and then it's the data. Like, is this a cycle that you were predicting in its best case scenario, and then now that you're sort of living in?
Yeah, man. This is the best interview I've been on in a long time, man. This
I'm gonna cut that piece and just
no, it's true. And I would argue that you're right. There's an analog, then technology gets involved and then shapes it, and then now creates this kind of new paradigm. And we've seen that in retail, right? We've seen big box stores now get disrupted by the Amazons, and now perhaps Amazon is looking at omni-channel like GoPuff and companies like that, saying, hey, wait, now there's this physical environment that they need to play with. Absolutely, I think this is inevitable. One of the things that we keep in mind, though, and have been since day one at Jane, was there should not be this like zero-sum game where you see a lot in other retail verticals where it's like, oh, hey, thanks restaurant for, building this wonderful restaurant and cooking beautiful food. The tech company is now going to take over, and we're going to take all the data and the customers, and you're just going to be a listed seller. Or, hey, thanks brand for selling on Amazon, but guess what? We now, as Amazon taking a look at your data, we're going to undercut you and create our own product, right? Like, that's not where we're headed. And quite frankly, I don't think that's the world we want to create, certainly not in the cannabis industry. And so since day one, we've called our retailers our partners, our brands our partners. It is a partnership. We have no intention of ever opening up our own dispensary or creating our own brand. We let our partners do that, our retail partners or brand partners, and let's go work together to create and provide for them tools that will help them scale their business for the next generation on a global scale, because that's ultimately what we all want, right? We want cannabis out there in the mainstream done right. And I think the only way you can do that is through this marriage of offline and online. And we take our role very, very seriously, but we take it as partners of this industry, not as the sole takers of this industry.
Well, it's we had a chance to meet like this maybe 6 or 8 months ago, connected through a friend in Santa Cruz. But I'm glad it's happy to obviously watch you grow. You're growing by leaps and bounds, and it's great to see you in this format as well. And so thank you for your time. Congrats to you and the team, and keep on trucking, because it's going to be a wild ride. You know that.
Amen, brother. Thanks so much, Jay.
Great. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Be well. Socrates Rosenfeld. If you like this program, please rate us on Apple Podcast or wherever you heard the show. It helps support the work we do. We're able to do what we do because of our ongoing partners, including Alterna Savings, Cannabis at Work, Cannabis Benchmarks, Can Delta, Gallagher, Headset, and Torque & Mains. Find out all that we do at businessofcannabis.com.